Madam President, we cannot hear you.
Can you hear now, Kayla? Okay,
Okay,
Yes, thank you.
let's start again.
all right.
President Mokel,
Here.
Vice President Fox,
Still here.
Commissioner Brennan,
Here.
Commissioner Krieg,
Here.
Commissioner Letourneau.
Here.
All 5 commissioners are present.
Great. We'll move on to item number 2, communications. Do any of the commissioners have anything they received or heard that they would like to share with the commission? Seeing none, we will move on to number 3, the consent agenda. We do need to pull 3G from the agenda per our attorney. She just wanted to take that off and redo some of the wording. So if we can get an approval of the consent agenda with 3G removed.
Make that motion.
I will second that motion.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Any other things that want to be pulled or, all right? All those in favor, oh,
I don't have anything else to pull. I was just wondering on the audit recommendation, if someone wants to kind of talk about that and that, because,
sure, we can do that. We can just have a short discussion. So let's pull 3H. Is that okay with the motion maker in the second?
Yep.
All right, so we'll pull also 3H. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. All right, 3H, the audit recommendation. Would anyone on the committee wish to speak on the interview process?
I'll
Mr.
take-
Drunt, you would like to start first? Okay,
I
great.
think I'll take that over first, and then if Jean has some comments, or if whoever else wants to talk about that. So we did have the meeting, and the subcommittee met with Mr. Letourneau, Mr. Fox, myself, and Jean again, and we reviewed them. And at the end of the day, we thought the recommendation should be that we do make a change in this. This was a unanimous decision that we came to. Just their philosophy on, and really getting a new look, a new set of eyes on the audit was kind of our reasoning behind it. Both firms were capable of doing it. We just thought that this one was a little bit more prepared for the discussion and some of the reasonings why we thought maybe there should be a change. So we asked some of the stuff on why some things did not get looked at in past, and they just talked about the process going forward and what they may do. So I think the audit may be a few more hours than, and that's why the difference in price. I think that there was one that was the difference in hours was really why. So just I think really more just a fresh set of eyes on everything that we do. Any other comments from Jean or Mr. Fox or Mr. Letourneau?
No, I think that's, even in their presentations, they mentioned having a new set of eyes. So they kind of all groups talked about it, that it's a good idea, and we agreed. And CLA was super professional in their presentation, so.
Yeah, largely second to everything you said, just to keep it brief, but yeah, all that.
All right. Is that all right with you? All right, I'll take a motion to approve 3H, the audit recommendation. Make that motion.
I will second.
And a second from Mr. Fox. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion passes. Thank you for the extra comments on that. And we'll move on to number 4, the liaison report. Ms. Brennan, Commissioner Brennan.
We had a very short meeting, so I have nothing to report, and tomorrow's very short also, so nothing to report on the future.
All right, great. Sometimes we need a short meeting every once in a while. So.
Are you saying something?
All right. We'll move on to number 5, which is our public comment period. This period provides an opportunity for the public to address the commission on items that are not on the agenda. Comments should not exceed 5 minutes. I may adjust the time limit based upon the number of persons seeking to comment. This comment period may not be used to make personal attacks, to air personality grievances, or for political endorsements or campaigns. The public comments are intended for informational purposes only. Commissioners will not enter into a dialogue with commenters, and questions from commissioners will be for clarification only. Are there any members of the public that would like to speak? Seeing none, we will move on to number 6, the general manager report. 6A, Mr. Durant.
Madam President, Commissioners, thank you. It's been busy, and as you can see from the packet and and we hope to not drag it on too long, but, you know, we did have some good discussions this last little bit on the water filtration discussion and where that's going and some recommendations. So we had some good discussions this last couple weeks on that. I did have lunch with Mr. Reynolds again. We were talking about a joint meeting. We've got, you know, 4 or 5 topics that we want to bring back, along with that pilot discussion, I think should be coming back one of the next couple meetings as well, for us to internally to have a discussion. We are working, next meeting, we will have the rate analysis and a preliminary report. So Dave Berg is going to be at our meeting on the next meeting to talk about that. So there'll be some good discussion on that. Insurance, got those contracts signed, and open enrollment will start here coming up on November 2nd and close on November 10th. Had the service territory meeting that's be discussed later on today. Continually working on budgets, and CIP will be coming, I think, in one of our next meetings as well. Cindy Minky and I have been working on handbook diligently and want to get that to you soon, again by first quarter of next year, but we hope maybe even a little sooner than that. Just want to report we did have two COVID cases that were not related. They didn't get an exposure from each other or anything internally, but their 2 weeks have passed, so they are back at work now. So nobody else got it from internally, so that was good. Kind of happened on a weekend, and they were sick on a Monday, and then they got tested. So it actually worked out that we didn't have very much exposure here, but we did give letters to everyone that was close to them in that setting, just to make sure people are aware of it, just to keep the precautions up. We did have some filtration pond discussions out here in front of the drive up. So there will be a little bit of some filtration ponding that we have to do in front of our drive up. So we thought maybe we could get it to the other side of the road, but it's going to really be for cost effectiveness. It's going to be in this area. It will be dry mostly. They'll be able to mow it. They say 75% of the time, but there may be times on a 1-inch rain that it fills up, which is good. That we are trying to clean the rivers up. So I think they're good things to have, and that's something that's even in the last 10 years has come about. So we got that decision made, and we're moving forward on that. Brad's working on that project. You know, we did get the EV charger out here from our power agency. We are getting the other locations prepared so we can just set them on there when they do come later this year. But we're trying to get them prepared on that. I got a meeting set up with Ms. Waltz tomorrow on some marketing stuff. MMPA wants to do some marketing stuff on the EV charging, so that's good. And I think that's what I have. So with that, I will stand for any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Drent? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll move on to number 7, which is our water items, and 7A is our water systems operation report. Mr. Schemmel.
Yep, thank you very much. As promised in the previous meeting, our flushing program did finish the same week as the last meeting. This is the earliest we've ever gotten it done for the entire city. Years ago, it took us 3 years to do the entire city. So, you know, with the addition of another employee, you know, plus changing some of the equipment that we used, you know, we've been able to do it now a couple of years in a row. Well, last year we didn't because of COVID, of course, but otherwise. Tank 8, logos are done. All the painting is complete. The insulation on the inside has been applied. We plan on starting to fill it November 8th. And the final for the project is December 10th, and we're on schedule for that. The plastic pipe tracer spec has been completed, and we're doing our part to issue permits for those. I believe there were several, Denise, just today, so that's moving right along. That's what I have for a report this evening.
Are there any questions for Mr. Schemmel? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, we will be moving on to 7B, which is our comprehensive evaluation of the municipal water treatment for SPU. Mr. Schemmel.
Yep, thanks again. Joining us virtually this evening is Miles Jensen and Ryan Hansen with SEH. You've heard from them both before. Tonight they're going to be presenting the summary for the evaluation of municipal water treatment for the study that we started quite some time ago. Pretty exciting to see where this has led. With that, I'll turn it over to Miles.
Thanks, Lon. And then Ryan, I wonder if you can share your screen. I'd like to go through, I've got a 16 slide presentation that we'll get through hopefully quite quickly.
Is that on the first slide? I can't.
It is.
Yes, it is.
Yep, it's very good. So, commission and members and staff, thank you for the opportunity here to present the culmination of the comp evaluation for municipal water treatment. This has been a project that you may recall we started approximately 1 year ago, and we have, as Lon just indicated, we've gone quite around with a discovery for the high quality water that you're currently producing, but also been able to consider improvements to the system and the what if scenario if there's a change in water quality requirements down the road. And so this has been quite an experience. I'd like to have Ryan Hansen share with you the report. Ryan was the primary author of the report, and I think it's important that he share it with you. Go ahead, Ryan.
Okay, I'll try to be pretty brief since I think I've presented maybe once or maybe twice at one of your meetings. I believe in the packet today you have this presentation attached along with the final comprehensive evaluation report. This is summarizing the entirety of that report. Briefly, if you need any follow-up information, it's very extensively detailed in that report. So some of your questions I may reference back to the actual report. So I'll do the presentation here. Did that go to the next slide? Looks like
Yes.
it. So the presentation outline for today is reviewing the water quality treatment and operations of your utility, present the study results, discuss the treatment alternatives, and describe any recommendations from those top 3 bullet points as a result of the report and the study. To start off, as most of you know, there is no extensive treatment besides chlorine, fluoride, and polyphosphates added to SBU's water. Water quality, which is very much detailed in the report, really paints a picture of great water quality coming out of the Jordan Aquifer. Most of you know that the Jordan Aquifer has very good quality of water. As of right now, your utility is meeting all enforced water quality standards, and anything that is recommended, the utility operates all wells to meet, to the best of their ability, the best quality water you can that would require no filtration. And that's been the case for a long period of time, that no filtration has ever been needed. And chlorine, fluoride, and the polyphosphates are added at well 12, and I believe possibly at well 15, or they have the ability to, which is mainly just to reduce aesthetic issues within the distribution system. It really doesn't remove, it just would reduce that red and black water that could present at the tap. So that's the current treatment. When it comes more to the study, we wanted to look at how the utility operates their wells and how that influences the distribution system. So the system was modeled using water gems for an average day demand of 7 MGD, which is pretty much where you guys are at right now, and more towards some of those projected, which would be a 9 MGD average day demand. So this 7 MGD is a pretty pretty good modeling standard for, the next decade or so. Utilized typical pumping steps, which is just what pumps run at certain times. And that was provided by the utility to accurately model the system. And the system was modeled for water age and nitrate distribution, which has been a concern throughout the utility for several decades. So we wanted to really see how that was being distributed throughout the system. I won't go into this extensively. The report really breaks it down a lot more. And in previous presentations, I broke this down. But as of right now, the water quality for nitrates, the normal zone, which is the north side of town, generally has higher levels of nitrate in a worst case scenario day, but in general, the wells that supply the normal zone do have higher levels of nitrate in a worst case scenario day, which means the wells are operating that have the higher level of nitrates. There is a potential for some of the areas of the normal zone to hit between that 5 and 6 milligram per liter of nitrates, which is well below the EPA's MCL of 10 milligrams per liter, but it is higher than the southern zones, the first high and the second high zones. So there is a little bit of inequality in the nitrate distribution between the three zones, but nothing that is exceeding the MCL that would raise too many concerns. So no need to remove the nitrates, and it's meeting all standards, and there's nothing of concern. Water age modeling. This was mainly to see if there's any portions of the system that have older water, and if those portions of the system have any issues with maintaining chlorine levels, disinfection throughout that part of the system. As you can see down at the southeast portion of the city, there is some older water, which just generally means by the time it comes out of the well and gets to the tap, it's the time that droplet of water would be in the system. Most of the system is less than a day or two, but that southeast portion, just because those tanks and they're farther away from the wells, they do have a little bit older water, but the utility provided me with chlorine levels down at tanks 5 and 6 in the southeast portion, and it's still well above the chlorine levels that we would like to see in the system. So I don't have any issues with currently how the utility is operating in regards to water quality or water age. So that just kind of gets to the point of the results of the study, that the modeling results did not raise any concerns with any of the current operational practices. The utility is meeting all enforced water quality standards by the EPA, and that the utility manages the system to ensure the best quality water, which means the presence of free chlorine is adequate. Polyphosphates are added to reduce red and black water, which is not required by any means. It's just a better tool for utility to help reduce any red and black water at the tap. And any wells that are of concern, the utility takes very aggressive action to make sure that those wells are either not used or pumped less than 1% of the total pumpage. In addition, nearly all the wells are blended prior to distribution, and especially any of them that would be of worse quality wells are always blended at the pump house prior to any distribution, which is a very good practice that the utility's been using for a long period of time. So the results of the study really state that there's no need for any treatment as of right now, but because of the SPU and the utilities desire to provide the best quality water and to plan for any future treatment needs, you may want to start implementing any treatment, system-wide treatment in the near future, and start to get it included to any planned installations. So as part of that, we put together 3 system-wide treatment alternatives. The utilities always sort of planned on satellite treatment. The system is set up where wells are in each of the zones to provide water equally kind of throughout the system. So satellite treatment was always planned, which would be at each of the pump houses or each of the well sites that they would be treated right there on site. So that was alternative 1. Alternative 2 was a centralized treatment facility. Many of the cities around your area have a central treatment plant where all the wells would be conveyed to one central location. Sometimes that can be very cost effective. Sometimes that can be quite a bit of water mains that would need to be put in to get to one central location, but we looked at that as well. And then an alternative 3 is sort of a blend of the two. Some of the sites that are a little bit farther away may deserve satellite treatment, and some of the ones that are more centralized would be conveyed to one central treatment plant. And all 3 of these alternatives looked at iron and manganese reduction, nitrate reduction, and lime softening, purely based on the water quality at each of the wells that would be providing water to that treatment facility. So alternative 1 is the satellite treatment. As I said, this is treatment at each of the well sites to keep costs lower on the water main installation side of things. This would probably be the easiest to implement in a phased, in a different, depending on which of the wells would want to be phased right away. This would probably be the most convenient to implement that. You can see I have out at Pump House 4, that would be best to probably decommission that pump house, just due to the fact that well 4 and 5 do have poorer quality water, and the capacity of those wells is maybe not substantial enough to justify a treatment facility right there on that site. That being said, some of the new wells would need to provide water that well 4 and 5 would be losing, and all of this is described in that report. So if you want more information on this alternative 1 scenario and why the wells are picked in certain locations and why the treatment plants are in certain locations, all of that would be provided in that report. As for the alternative 2 centralized treatment plant, we looked at the system and where the wells were located and the most cost-effective way to convey all the water mains to one central location, and sort of figured out that somewhere between, this central area here is probably the best spot for all the wells to be conveying to one location to try to keep water main costs lower. And some of these new well sites are within that area too, and a couple of those well sites have already even been included in your CIP and been planned for. So it just made the most sense to have excuse me, a water treatment plant in that area. The centralized water treatment plant would need to be designed for 2040 capacity, which would be right around 25 MGD. So it's a fairly large plant. If there was ever any desire for municipal lime softening or municipal softening, being that the utility and just the Jordan Aquifer in general has relatively hard water, the centralized treatment option would be the most cost effective, because lime softening or any softening process can take up quite a bit of space, and it's not feasible to have at satellite facilities. So this would be the most likely scenario to implement municipal lime softening. Again, Pump House 4 and 5, it just is not really feasible to keep that well operating or supplying a centralized facility. All this is described, again, more in the report. Site selection, like I said, is trying to be centralized somewhere between Pump House 15, and I believe that's County Road 83, or I believe it's Mystic Lake Drive. Someone could correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that's correct. But somewhere within that location would be the most feasible for a centralized treatment facility. And after talking with the utility a little bit, these three sites seem to be, as of right now at this preliminary report, seem to be the most feasible options as of right now for the utility to consider pursuing. This would need to be either included in the CIP or included in your planning efforts, or would be have to be more on the back end when it comes to the engineering and design of that water treatment facility. But these were three sites that were laid out, and I think would be good talking points for the commission to start considering if this is the route they would like to pursue. And then the third alternative is the hybrid, which is a little bit of both, trying to sort of pick which satellite facilities are the most feasible to have a satellite water treatment plant, and which of the wells would be most cost effective can be conveyed to one more central or hybrid treatment plant. Again, it's kind of that same spot as the centralized treatment plant, just because that alternative 2 central plant, just because there's a lot of wells within that vicinity that would be cost effective to convey the water main over and the water over to that water plant. Like I said, there's new wells, potential new well sites for future capacity needs that are within that area that have already been designated. So that's kind of the best option. And it's the same as, you know, these 3 sites here for that centralized hybrid alternative plant. In the report, we call the plant the normal zone plant because it essentially pulls most of the wells that would be in the normal zone, and it would supply 100% of the normal zone. Whereas the first high and the second high zone would have satellite plants within those zones. The water plant would have the option to feed the first high zone, much like the centralized treatment plant would need to feed the first high zone. But that would just be supplemental supply from those normal zone wells. So it's actually a pretty good option for resiliency and supply, with that water plant being able to supply the first high zone as a backup. And then there'll also be PRVs that from this first high zone that could feed down into the normal zone. So there's quite a bit of resiliency built into this hybrid model. And then lastly, just sort of comparing the costs of all these 3 alternatives. I don't need to go into this a whole lot of detail because it's in the report, but as you can see, just economy of scale treatment is going to be cheaper when you're just building one centralized treatment plant. The problem is you're going to pick up a lot more on the back end with those water mains. This is pretty typical. What you're going to see is the more you reduce those facilities, it's going to reduce the capital cost for treatment, but the more water main we pick up, it's just going to pick that up, the cost to try to even it out. So annual O&M would be in a similar way, whereas the central plant would be less to operate on an annual operation, maintenance, and repair. Whereas, you know, as you start to reduce the amount of facilities like the hybrid, it's going to keep reducing the cost of the operation and maintenance. So that being said, for recommendations, if treatment were decided to be pursued or be planned to be pursued, it is recommended that alternative 3 hybrid model be followed. It's recommended that all the facilities be designed and engineered to be gravity treatment facilities. It reduces the operation and maintenance and the repairs. They're just much easier plants to operate. one thing that should be done regardless, or especially if this treatment alternative 3 wants to be pursued, would be purchase a site for that hybrid treatment plant between Pump House 15 and County Road 83, like I had stated in one of the other slides with that red box. Another recommendation would be to sample the groundwater out at Tank 8. That's where one of the satellite treatment facilities and a couple new wells that would supply that second high zone would be located. And to really get a picture of what that satellite treatment plant should look like, the groundwater should be tested and just analyzed to see what really needs to be removed from those wells. And lastly, anything that's currently included in the utilities plans for installation and construction should match the alternative 3 hybrid system map. Any planned water mains should try to match up with that alternative 3 system map, just to make sure that if treatment with this hybrid alternative 3 model was ever going to be pursued, it would be an easy transition. So I want to emphasize again, that this is really only to plan for any future treatment needs. And if those needs want to be met, the utility should start implementing them now. I can leave some time if we have time for questions. Otherwise, most of the information would be in that report. Thank you.
Thanks, Ryan.
All right.
So Lon or anyone, any questions that you'd like to ask at this time?
Are there any questions from the commissioners first for Mr. Hanson or Mr. Jensen?
I'm not really sure who my questions are for, if it's staff or for the consultant, but the location was at the gravel pit. And I'm wondering what the time frame is for the gravel pit to be ready for construction. And I know that it's being filled in currently, but there's still some work that's being done on it. So I'm wondering what the time frame is when that property would be available.
Yeah, either one of us can answer, but I think that, sorry, Madam
No,
President.
go right ahead.
We have looked at this, and we do think that, no matter what we do, it's going to be, if we have some options on a land, we don't think treatment is going to be in the next 2 or 3 years by any means, but we're going to make sure we put infrastructure in place that if we do need to do treatment, we can act fast. So as far as timing, I don't think it's our first choice in our internal discussions, but it's just one spot that can be. We think that if at all possible, we'd like to use the property we have on Wellhouse 15 for that, then we wouldn't need that. So, but it's a matter of expanding that option on that. So I think that it's not our first choice, but it's just that's the area that could be used if we needed to. So if we have to, if we can't make some agreements on those other properties, I think then we would talk in that area and try to get some options on a land in that gravel pit area for future development. I think the big key of this is we want to make sure that we start putting in water mains, we develop our CIP so that we can purchase some properties and then also look at the cities when they're redoing roads and maybe put water main in at that time. So if we do need treatment, if it was PFAS, if it was something else, that then we could tackle it at that time. Joe, I will defer to you.
At one time, the gravel pit had a projected life 20-plus years, but I think they've been accelerating, looking to close sooner and have it be redeveloped. But we have not seen a firm timetable yet on that, nor on the property directly across 17th Avenue, which is open right now and being advertised by a realtor for sale. That's why that number 2. And then, as Greg said, I think priority would be to discuss with the city, with the adjoining parkland and with the school at Sunpath next to Pump House 15, what it would look like, how much space it would take up, and how we could work together on that as a first option, since it's partly already in our possession. And also any additional area we might need would be coming from another public entity where it's non-taxable land.
The water treatment for the quality of the water and the water softening facility, would that have to be constructed at the same time, or can they be prepared for water softening at a later date?
I'll let the professionals talk to that, but my gut feeling is you put some plumbing in so we can add it, but it's definitely if you're looking at the cheapest way, it would be do it all at once, right? But I'll let Lon and Miles talk to what that may look like, whether we can put some plumbing in place, so at least we'd be prepared for it.
Right, and the other consideration is there'd be some pre-treatment before softening could take place that would have to be allotted for, so there'd be a slightly larger footprint. Did you have anything else, Miles, on top of that?
I just wanted to point out that the lime softening, under the hybrid option, you would have if you wanted to do lime softening across the whole city, then you would end up with some small facilities that would have their own little lime softening system. So to answer the question, in general, yes, you can build the treatment plant and then come back in later and add softening. I wouldn't necessarily, if you wanted to run down the road of softening under the hybrid model, you'd probably be looking at zeolite softening on the smaller facilities and lime softening on the other, which there's a kind of a water quality issue because they'd be different. Otherwise, I would definitely, if you're going to look at softening, the central plant option is the one that makes the most sense.
Okay. You have any more questions?
I do. You had a financing breakdown, and I think there's grants and different grants that are available for water treatment, and I think that we should take that into consideration when we're talking about money in the future. That's just my recommendation. It indicated that there's $20 million currently in the reconstruction fund, but I would like to know what the impact is on the other work that's being done in the system. And then I would like to see a rate analysis of having that water treatment and the impact on the community and the ratepayer.
Okay, which part does somebody want to tackle first? Mr. Grant?
Yeah, we definitely, when we look at a rate analysis with Dave Berg, we're going to be looking at some of those things. We can lay those in and what that would look like to rates. We'll work with Gene on that for understanding. I mean, if the commission desires one option, alternative 1, 2, or 3, it definitely narrows it down to we can look at what those dollar figures are, and once we embed them into our rates. We can definitely do that, and that's something that we will look into. We're definitely looking at some of that $20 million and looking at additional land purchases and different things like that. So as you can see by any of these, no matter which option you take, you're going to have to do some bonding with it as well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, any other comments or questions from staff? Mr. Bryan, or Mr. Jensen, Mr. Hanson, did either of you have anything either to add to?
I do not.
Okay.
Just want to thank you for the opportunity.
Okay, great.
Can I just?
Yep, go right ahead.
So, yeah, I mean, as I look at this, and as, internally and staff looks at this, alternative 1, obviously is the most cost-effective. We think that there are some potential challenges in the future, like we don't know what contaminants are coming, and if we have to treat just for nitrates and some of those things, it would be alternative number 1 would be our best bet for just treating for those and then moving on. The reason that the hybrid alternative we looked at that was, what if it's a chemical that's not as easy to treat as nitrates? That's when we thought, well, okay, let's try to group our pressure zones together. And we went to a hybrid option where at least our pressure zone is together in a facility or 2 facilities in that pressure zone. just because the piping are so far apart. And then we could be a little bit easier to treat some chemicals if we have to in the future that we don't know about. And that's why we're recommending the hybrid option. Would it be nice to have central? Yeah, I think certain parts of it nice would be central treatment, but I mean, currently we have a $5 million budget or thereabouts in the water department, and then when we look at $100 million on the outside, 104 to 140 million with some softening, that's significant rate increases, and that's why we chose as a group, we said, hey, does alternative three, hybrid option, alternative three make sense where if something did happen, we could start purchasing some property. So we are ready, put some pipe in the ground and do some work. We're looking at tank 8. We're definitely gonna put the pipe in the ground for the treatment. And if we do need treatment, we can add that after the fact. So that was some of the things that we talked about internally. So I think the three options are here is go satellite, the cheapest one for our ratepayers. But I think we have some exposure in the future. Central is going to be significant increase in rates. But then we could do some of that softening with it. There's going to be definitely lots of dollars expenditures happening if that's the case. And then the hybrid option is let's get some land options on different areas. We have some already, like Tank 8. We have enough spots there. We have to figure it out whether and Pump House 15th, whether we can get some more land in that area. And there's a couple other small areas that we may have to acquire a little bit of land, get that under our belt, because as Shakopee develops and some of these areas develop, we're not going to have the same option maybe in 5 years that we do right now. So that's why we're really looking at this hard. Besides, you guys challenged us to let's look at this, but we also, when we started looking at this, we said, hey, we have to make sure that if we're going to do something, we need to act now, because land is not going to be available in too many more years, and then we're going to be stuck where we're at. Then we're back to only having an alternate number one, and then try to squeeze something on our existing sites. So those were the things that we looked at some more, and Miles and Ryan worked hard on this, and as we came up with these scenarios, that's kind of where we were at. Joe, do you have any other comments on this?
No, I think you covered it. That was our approach.
Yeah.
Okay. I do believe that we had consensus to look at the hybrid option, if I remember correctly from the commissioners. So I'm going to go to the last slide and say, with this plan for the future treatment needs, we might want to start implementing now. What do we need to do to make this start in the process?
So if you tell us that's the route we want to go, you understand some of the cost. Joe and Lon are working on laying in some of the CIP needs in that area. If you're saying, yep, that's the direction that this commission wants to go, we will look at what land is available and work with some people to get some land purchase in the next year or so. And then Lon and his group will work at, how does the piping look to get to these different spots once we acquire land. So we have to get the land first. Once we can get the land, get them under our belts, you'll see those things coming through. And then the next phase will be like, okay, now how are we going to get certain wells, certain pump house as pipe to this area, whether we have to run dual main in certain areas or whether we can just run one main. If we are able to do it in Pump House 15, we've got several wells on the site. We may then say, okay, if we're not going to have 4 and 5 anymore, we're going to, might get the numbers wrong, drill number 18 or 19? 18, drill number 18, and then close 4. You might see that as a recommendation in the next 6 months to a year if that's what we think is. But the first step is, let's get the land so we know where we're going. Once we get that, then we can implement on the philosophies on how we're going to get there. So that's what we're really looking for. If we want to say, yep, the hybrid option is where we're going to go, please put that into the CIP, and you'll see that coming up on some of those dollars in the CIP.
Okay. Any of the commissioners disagree with my assessment, or is that where we're leaning?
I have a number
Mr.
of questions,
Fox. Of
thoughts,
course.
and they'll kind of, so I think the big issue is, and Jody kind of touched on it, is the softening facet. If we do want softening, it does make sense to have everything centralized. I don't think doing everything piecemeal is the best approach, but I don't think we should commit hard to either the mix or the centralized, because, I mean, there's a lot of overlap there. So I'd say go for the hybrid approach, but then pencil in, maybe we will at some point divert all things into a centralized location. Because it is cheaper to do it hybrid, but if we do possibly want that option, and it is more expensive to do it on the back end after the fact, but, I mean, it is really the only way to do it effectively softening going forward. But then we have to look at what do our customers actually use in terms of water? How much is that going to be drinking and bathing, or yard usage, or industrial usage, which, if I remember right, has repercussions to the producers because it changes the input, so it changes the output. So there's a lot of factors there, but in going through a lot of the answers to the surveys that we did get, water quality, despite meeting whatever official standards there are, doesn't really pass the smell test, quite literally, for a lot of people. So there is something to be done on that front. And that put the thought in my head, what if instead of centralized treatment for softening, what if we have some kind of group rebate fund thing where it's like 5 cents a bill, but then you can every 5 years get a water softener thing, or we do a salt delivery service, like salt as a service for, and we make it a VAR process where we don't make a massive facility and we don't waste all that money that goes into the ground or to manufacturing processes, but we still address the hardness issue and the cost concerns for other people. Because, I mean, water quality is a social issue, and a lot of the comments were, well, I already pay for my system, why would I pay for another or additional, or other people can get their own? And the issue is a lot of people can't get their own. And I know, living on a well, I definitely have some very hard water that kills my appliances and further contributes to expenses, cleaning them and the plumbing and the filtration and all of that. So it's a really big puzzle. And yeah, so long story short, I don't know, we might want centralized, but we do still have to address hardness and smell and all that too.
Okay.
Can I answer this
Yes,
a little
you
bit?
may.
Yeah, so I don't disagree. The only hard part is if we go to a central versus a hybrid, or if we start with a hybrid and then eventually go to a central, the scale of the amount of property we need is much larger. So that's where the challenge is that we may not get some parcels of property because we may want too much. So somebody like at Pump House 15, they may say, I'm willing to give up this much, but not that much, and then we have challenges there. So that would be my only concern is I like the latter, like, is there something we can do for our customers to assist them in the purchasing of salt or something of that measure, rather than spending the extra, X amount of $50-60 million to make sure it gets to all one spot, just because our wells, and this is just previous commissions from way back when, our wells are spread out so far, and try to get them pipes to one area is just very challenging. And you have 169 running right through the middle, and bedrock and some of those other things. So we just have very large dollar figures that do come into play with that. So that would be my only concern, is that if we say let's start with 3, it's gonna be tough to change midstream and now say we wanna do central. So, anything is possible, but I'm just saying that's just my gut feeling. That's where the challenge becomes.
Well, and it's also like a multi-year project. It's not like something we're going to be aiming for to have complete even in the next 3 years. I mean, part of this could take a decade or 15 years if we're talking about running pipe all the way across the city, right?
Even in the hybrid model, I think it's a long process, right? It's not like this is gonna be a couple years, unless, the only thing I would say, unless we have a contaminant that is in our system where we have to just spend the money and bond and then just do major projects. But I still think the cost effectiveness with option 3, and then we can handle anything that comes at us with the hybrid. And if the commission at a later date wants to reduce some softening costs for people or assist in that. I think we addressed that issue at that time.
Commissioner Brennan?
Yeah, I think the idea of that Caden had on providing a water softening, in-home water softening system, some program where people can manage it on their own, in their own, determine how they want to use it and when they want to use it. I think that's a good option to maybe look at and.
Okay.
It'd be like the cable modem when you get TV. You'd get the water softener and you just pay the whatever rate, and we deliver salt, so we get a truck and load it up with a few hundred bags of salt and just make the rounds. Could have the meter reader guys do it before we go full AMI. Or after, they could still just switch departments.
So
I'll just point out the primary fundraiser for the football team is selling salt.
It's why it's so successful.
And they have a bright future at Spock. They can come to work for us after.
Yeah. So that would be my thing, that if we want to do something with softening at a later date, I think that would be a great option that we can look at a future date. And then it's just really, okay, do you want to stay at each spot, or do you want to do a hybrid model, which I think the hybrid model protects us as a utility more in the future. Not that we couldn't do it. I think that we would be able to do it at satellite. You would just need many more facilities at that time, so.
And also, looking at the difference in cost and running it year over year, it does cost less than maintenance to have everything centralized. It's a small cost difference, yeah, but we're also looking at facilities that will be here for 30, 40, 50 years. So in the long run, as these facilities are here and the city grows, because Shakopee's not gonna get smaller, and we're not gonna be, we could be 100,000 people in 2040. It's not impossible, but I mean, it depends on the economy and what the rest of the world does, but.
I think the goal was 60-some thousand.
Well, could, yeah, not will be, but, and that, yeah, numbers, but we could have a massive influx of people, and would doing it piecemeal still be the same, or would we want the scale of a centralized facility?
Yeah, that's all a policy decision in my mind. You're looking at, what? Couple 100,000 difference in annual maintenance, but the difference is 25, 30 million. Yeah, the cost of money is just probably not there, but, but yeah, I mean, if that's what the commission desires, that's what we'll do.
I do think that the consensus is still towards the hybrid model. Am I incorrect in that
Yeah, I'm just arguing.
piece? Yeah, I know you are. I'd
have
expect
one-
nothing less.
One question.
Sure, Mr. Krieg.
For alternative 2 and 3, that plant that's kind of in that central location, what's the difference in equipment between 2 and 3? What would be the central plant? I understand there's a difference in the amount of land that we would need, but for that central plant, is there a big difference in the equipment we buy under 2 and under 3?
It would be definitely significant, just because we're bringing everything from 2, and we have to go from a 7 MGD plant, or I mean, the 9 to a much larger when we bring everything in. It's just, yeah, it's.
The alternative 3 hybrid plant is actually going to be a lot closer to like almost 18 MGD for all of the north zone supply wells.
Okay.
And under
Yeah, so-
2, it's 25?
It'd be about, 25. So there's about 7 MGD outside of that would be supplying the first and second high zone. And that matches pretty well up with the water supply plan.
Okay, yeah, I think the big difference is you got the water main cost, I guess, I apologize for that. So because you'd have to get that from all different areas and try to get that water main to that area, so.
But if you're just looking at the difference in the treatment portion, you got 2 other treatment plants.
Right.
So even though the hybrid central normal zone plant's smaller than the overall central plant and will cost less and take up less space, you have to put a plant in each of the other 2 pressure zones.
Right. Yeah, I was thinking more of, how hard of a decision is it if we go 2 or 3? Are we really cut off from going back to 2 if we go 3? And I was wondering, what is the size of that central plant? And, is there a way of essentially going back decentralized if we wanted to.
I'll stretch here the walls.
Right, so that's why I was thinking about it, yeah. It seems like if we go the hybrid route, we're going the hybrid route. It's not an easy way back to kind of working back towards a centralized system. So,
Yeah, I would agree with that. If you can work and get a little more land at that 15, 16 pump house area, you could potentially do it in the future, but I think that if the planning is for the hybrid, we'll start there, and if something major happen, I mean, we can make a shift if we need to, and see if we can make it happen. I mean, there's, I'm not saying we can't, there's just a little bit of a struggle there.
I would like to add, the only major difference is gonna be those water main expenses. Right now, this hybrid plant can supply a few MGD to the first high and the second high. But now when you say now that's the centralized plant, that 16-inch pipe now needs to be bumped up to like a 30-inch pipe, because now it needs to supply all 9 MGD, and it needs to get water to the farther point of that first and high second zone. I think the facility infrastructure is a lot less than what would be for the water main. I think the facility could easily be upgraded to the centralized. I think your issue is going to be distribution.
so on that point, is there a pipe that's being run in the hybrid system which could be upsized to basically preserve that optionality?
There'd be several that would need to be picked up in the CIP. A lot of ones that are already included in the CIP along 17th, and some of these, if you're doing any of the conveyance lines, several pipes would need to be upsized. I know this one off Thrush Street that maybe is already installed or being installed, that would need to be upsized. So yes, there's several pipes that would need to be picked up in the CIP that currently differ from the hybrid model.
Yes.
And Mr. Krieg, I'm not sure if your question was if there is a current project that's going on that we could upsize, is that what the question?
Right.
And I think internally we should look at that. Like, I understand what you're saying. I think that if there is a project that if we would make a decision later on, does it make sense to use some of those oversizing funds to make that happen? And we'll have to have some internal discussions on that. So I do understand what you're talking about, though.
Okay.
All right, any other comments or questions? Do we have enough direction?
Forward.
Yeah, I think we did. I don't think we were looking for, I think we were looking for a motion to approve the report.
Accept it, yes.
Accept the report, and then we will start building CIP alongside this, so.
All right, can I get a motion to accept the report?
So motioned.
And a second?
I'll second.
Perfect. I have a motion by Mr. Fox and a second by Mr. Krieg. Any other comments or questions? All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? A report is accepted. Thank you, Mr. Hanson and Mr. Jensen.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Yes, you too. All right, we'll move on now to number 7C, the resolution for the exchange agreement between D.R. Horton, Mr. Adams. Sorry, missed the.
Thank you. As I noted in my memo, the commission previously approved a land swap agreement with D.R. Horton to cover the permanent drainage easement over a portion of our Tanks 8 site for stormwater in exchange for Outlot B in Windermere South 5th Edition to provide us with a site for a future water supply well. Unfortunately, upon reflection and discussion with the developer, we realized the original agreement did not include all of the temporary easement areas necessary for construction, and there was identified in discussions with the city that a drainage pipe exiting from the stormwater pond crossing the northeast corner of our property was inadvertently omitted by the developer. That's a requirement for the stormwater system to be effective. So you've received a revised agreement that incorporates these necessary additional easement areas, including the temporary construction easements, and along with a resolution, number 2021-21, that the commission is recommended to adopt as a best practice when you are exchanging land rights and giving up land rights per your legal counsel. So we are recommending at this time the commission adopt the resolution that's before you, and note that the actual agreement and its extensive number of attachments and exhibits, the labeling on that is getting cleaned up, but it's not materially doing any substantive change to the agreement. So we recommend that you do adopt this. The developer is anxious to begin the grading work for the stormwater pond to stay on schedule, and we want to cooperate with that. And our attorneys are on top of it to make sure that all of your rights are preserved in this process. And I'll stand for any questions.
Any questions from the commissioners? All right, seeing none, I would accept a motion approving the resolution. Ms. Brennan.
I make a motion to approve resolution number 2021-21, approving the exchange agreement and all the documents necessary to carry out the exchange agreement and completion of closing under the exchange agreement. And that's between D.R. Horton and the Shakopee Public Utilities.
All right, I have a motion and a second.
I will second all of that.
Seconded by Mr. Fox. All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to 7D, which is the West End Lower Bluff Service Area. Mr. Adams.
Thank you again. This project is prompted by the city, has already approved a feasibility study to extend a sanitary sewer force main and construct a lift station on the West End Lower Bluff area as they defined it. So this is west of the Windermere development, where there is a sewer and a water stub, left just south of Highway 169. And this has been an area below the bluff and south of the freeway that's very narrow area to extend services through and identify benefits for. So the city did a feasibility study. I included that as an attachment for reference of the area they studied. What we're being asked to do is extend a trunk water main without having a property owner fund the lateral water main costs up front, and not have that prompted by any developer or done under a 429 process where the city assesses infrastructure costs, but to do it under a unique policy for our commission that was adopted by Resolution 815 in 2005, where you would identify what the lateral water main equivalent value cost is and what the oversizing cost is. You would fund 100% of the water main up front and pay for it out of the trunk fund, and then you would recover the lateral water main equivalent cost in the future when the property that's being crossed connects to the water main. And you would refund or put those funds back into the trunk account. You've done this a number of times. I gave some examples with Town Line Road or County Road 79 when the city extended service to Beckridge Park Estates, County Road 17 and Valley View Road improvements out by the hospital when they cut St. Francis Avenue off access to County Road 17 and opened up the area east and west of south of St. Francis Avenue for future development. And then when Jennifer Lane was constructed south of County Road 78 through Valley Creek Crossing, second edition, there were a number of driveways off of County Road 17 to the south of there that the county wanted to have eliminated. So Jennifer Lane was built across several properties that are now, several of them are coming in for development, and you're collecting your fees at that time. But this would be another one of those kinds of projects. to really get a handle on what the costs are and what share is lateral water main equivalent cost and what is trunk cost. We're proposing that the commission approve the use of the city's engineering consultant, Bolton and Mink. They've submitted the attached proposal to do a brief feasibility study to determine those costs, and then to plan to do that project parallel to the city's force main, and on that same timetable. I think they're uniquely qualified to do the cost estimate and engineering since they're working on the parallel trunk main, and they are on your approved list for consulting engineers. Their proposal, I want to correct my memo, had a typo. The not-to-exceed cost is $37,250 in their proposal, and staff is recommending that you approve that proposal, and I'll stand for any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Adams?
That rate, what year is that money? Is that like now or when it's sold in the future?
So per the policy in the resolution 815, you establish what the cost is when actual construction costs are done, and then you index it to the construction cost index. So you get basically an area charge to the benefiting area. It might be so many dollars per square foot or per acre or net acre. And then each year that between then and when they hook up, it can increase by inflation.
Okay, cool. So we're not losing money.
So
So if
in theory,
everybody
we're not
would be
losing
making
money.
money versus, you know, if
The risk
construction
is,
costs.
yeah, the risk is they never hook up,
Okay.
and
Which
then-
is unlikely.
which is unlikely for that narrow band that has to be crossed to get to the more open area. That might be, I think, being purchased by the city, and I don't think, it's just undevelopable because it's at the toe of the slope of the bluff, and there's power lines across it. So there's a portion there that might be all trunk costs with no lateral benefit, but then when the land opens up to the west on the Bregman parcel, there'll be lateral benefit. Eventually, it'll develop and they'll hook on.
Okay. Any other questions?
Question.
Mr.
For when we've done this in the past, have we fully recovered the money, or do we still have some outstanding balances that are being indexed?
On the 3 projects I identified, there has been partial recovery, but not 100% recovery yet on any one of those 3. So they all have varying lengths of time, going back 10, 12 years. So it can be a very lengthy process to eventually recover the money.
Is there any kind of projection for that, or is that something we track actively? Or this seems like something that would have an infographic to sell people on it. Because if we haven't completed any of them yet, that's not really, I mean, does it still work into our favor, though it's not, are we not expecting to be there yet because there's more time on the clock, essentially?
Yeah, there's no, it depends on how you establish the fee, but the ones we've done, there's no time clock. There's no deadline for them to develop. So it comes due when they want to develop, sell to a developer, or if it's an individual property, when they hook up.
So then we're still in the red on these, technically speaking?
Yes, we are, unfortunately.
So what we're looking for today is to have the study completed and not the,
Correct. Have a short, brief feasibility study prepared that will let you know what the costs are, what the risks are, what area would be charged in the future. So, similar to the city's feasibility study, we'd have some maps to show you and some areas and fees and more information. And they promised they could do that in a very short amount of time and have it back to you at a very near future meeting, if not your next one, the one after that.
So just to concisely understand, the city is requesting we do something that will set us back financially for some time and paying almost $40,000 for that privilege to just get it assessed? Or is the city willing to pay some of that too?
No, the city's not willing to pay the $37,250. That's a cost that would get rolled into the fees that the benefiting properties would eventually pay. It would be part of the same project as the actual construction costs. But no, the city's not not offering to pay any of this. They paid for their own feasibility study for the sewer portion.
And that was going to be my next question. I'm assuming that the city also has some outstanding amounts from these prior studies that haven't been, if we're still waiting for some of that develop, I'm assuming they are?
Yes, Jennifer Lane, I think maybe 35 of the 60 acres have developed and paid fees, but the others are stuck where landowners and developers can't agree on, or there's a 5-acre parcel, I think, with a house on it they don't want to hook up, things like that.
Okay. Any other comments or questions?
Yeah, it seemed like there's kind of two separate issues, right? There's the funding mechanism, right, which sometimes is a risk, right, that we don't develop. And then there's the feasibility study on what, this is likely going to cost in this instance, right? So.
Right, and they're going to do this feasibility study. That's part of the fee. The rest of the fee, in fact, the bulk of the fee is to actually do the design services and the work if you want to go ahead with the project. But they rolled it all into one proposal, presuming you're going to want to proceed, but they will get you the numbers very quickly. It will be doable financially from talking with Gene. The trunk fund may, because it hovers around neutral, it's designed to break even. We take money in all the time constantly with development, and we're paying it out when projects are done. That it may go negative because of this project, but we would make an inter-fund transfer from another fund like the Connection Fund, which has a surplus at this time, and then it would get paid back. Eventually, it would get paid. That's the intent, that eventually it gets paid back. The lateral equivalent cost, the trunk cost is already in your budget for the trunk fee and everything.
Okay. Ms. Brennan?
Can I make a motion?
You can.
I make a motion to authorize a proposal for engineering services by Bolton and Mink, not to exceed the cost of $37,250.
All right, I have a motion. Can I get a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Letourneau. All right, any other comments or questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Moving on to number 8, which is our electric items. 8A is our electric systems operation report. Mr. Carlson.
Good evening, thank you.
Good evening.
Current projects we're working on, it's been busy. Crews are out working on multiple projects. They're installing there's 4 EV stations they're working on now, getting the electric services to them. City Hall, South Bridge, Dog Park, Lewis Street parking lots, and Community Center. There's one left to go in at the Community Center. We are still waiting for the EV chargers at this time. We have not received them. The one here at Shakopee Utilities has been installed last week. It is up and running. Canterbury Crossings development, finished up with that project, and Windermere 4th Edition, putting in some lateral 3-phase lines along to connect the 2 phases of that project to finish up Windermere South 4th Edition. Levy Drive street lighting has been completed for phase 1, and Arizin Apartments is another project they've been working on. There's been 4 outages since our last meet. Stonebrook Golf Course, we had a cutout failure out there, 1 customer, about 65 minutes. Bluebird Trail, Embassy Circle, 135 customers affected out there. Outage was about 70 minutes. And then 737 6th Avenue West, we had a customer mass overhead connection was bad. And a tree branch at 128th Street, 26-minute outage, 5 customers affected. With that, my report for the meet. Any questions?
All right, are there any questions for Mr. Carlson?
Could you give us a tour of the EV station after the meeting?
You bet.
I don't know how exciting it will be, but I think it would be good to
I
see
don't have
it.
anything to plug into it as of yet, so.
Okay.
All right. All right, seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll have a short tour then, I guess. Sounds exciting. All right, moving on.
Is that actually allowed with the agenda and all of that? Because it's outside, so it's publicly available.
Also make it the next meeting. I think
We
that
could
would-
do
might
that.
be-
And on the agenda, I can see the look of
Follow the
panic.
rules.
Ms. Attorney Brennan, comment?
Madam President, Commissioner Fox, you make an excellent point. Traditionally, as you know, if there's possible for a quorum of the commissioners to be present, we like to give notice and note that for the general public. And so one possibility would be if not everyone can make it and we're less than a quorum, then less than a quorum could perhaps swing by tonight, or it might be more orderly to do it at the next meeting when we can provide the notice in advance.
Okay. We have one of those two options, so.
I'll go home.
I know, I was thinking, I'll probably go home too, but just so that we're aware. So maybe we want to put it on next agenda just in case the other three of us that make the quorum can go, if two decide to go this time. Thank you, Mr. Carlson. Thank you, Attorney Brennan. All right, moving on to 8B, which is the City of Prior Lake franchise fee, and we are going to speak to Attorney Brennan again.
Madam President, Commissioners, hello. I think I can be relatively brief here. Within your packet, it looks like a lot of material, but maybe I can summarize it and try to break it down, hopefully in a concise way. There's information from 2021 involving the City of Prior Lake and a desire to increase the franchise fee. As there's also information going back to 2006, which is when the City of Prior Lake first adopted a franchise and a franchise fee affecting SPU. And in the course of that discussion, SPU provided a separate letter to the city identifying some concerns as to the statutory authority to proceed in this manner. And here the recommendation really is just to stay the course, to be consistent with what SPU did in 2006, and to note the question as to the statutory authority here, and also to provide a courtesy copy of a recent case that really delves into the ins and outs of franchise statutes. And so let me just be quiet and see if there are any questions.
Any questions on the franchise fee? There are none.
Well,
Mr. Fox?
So they don't have the authority to collect money from these people because we are an entity of Shakopee technically, so they would be our customers, and Prior Lake can't collect money against Shakopee, not residents, but customers effectively?
It's even more specific, I guess, or narrow than that, believe it or not. And that is that, courts are really used to interpreting statutes, and they look and see what the statute says. And there are a couple of statutes that specifically address the authority to impose a franchise and the fees and when you can do that. And some of them just don't apply to municipal utilities, like 216B.36. That's the more typical one that's used on non-municipal utilities. And so the question really is, well, does the city have the authority to do it? And in the in the City of Baxter, Brainerd Public Utilities example, it's kind of interesting, but Brainerd Public Utilities existed before the City of Baxter ever came to be. And so the court found that to be persuasive and said, well, you've got a city that's trying to impose something under the statute for operating and giving it permission to operate within the city limits, when in fact the utilities were there before the city was. And here there's some common factors in that SPU's facilities were in place in Eagle Creek Township before the City of Prior Lake before that area was annexed into the City of Prior Lake, is maybe the best way to put it.
Okay. Does that understand or make
So it's
clarification?
legally ours and they shouldn't be able to do it, but we're nice and don't want to cause problems, so we let them.
I think that's a fair assessment, actually. I mean, one option would be to go into litigation, like it happened at the City of Baxter and Brainerd. We were not really recommending that option. You'd like to see public bodies get along and cooperate. On the other hand, they may not know about this case, and so it's good to bring it to their attention. And certainly SPU wants to have the ability to preserve its objections.
So if a ratepayer was to sue the city, saying they don't have the right to collect the fee that we're passing through, do we get drug into that?
Commissioner Krieg and Commissioners, that is an excellent question. And that would be the reason, I suppose, to send the objection letter to the city of Prior Lake and encourage them to take a look at approaching their franchise in a different way. If there were such a lawsuit, I think SP would would take the defense that, listen, we didn't impose the fee, it's Prior Lake, and so Prior Lake would be the necessary defendant. That certainly would be our position. But as you note, when litigation starts, the plaintiffs tend to cast a wide net.
So largely, doesn't this apply mostly to the places in Prior Lake we'd be trading off to MVAC?
That's a possibility, and that also factors into the decision not to recommend any kind of legal action or recourse at this point, because it may be a short-term problem.
Okay. All right. I think, do we have a consensus to just stay the course then at this point?
Seems like more headache than it's worth.
Yes. I agree. And others? Yep. I think we have that consensus
Do
that
we need a motion or anything, or do we
Yep.
just going to send that?
I think a motion would be helpful if that's
Perfect.
okay with the
Okay.
commissioners.
All right. I will take a motion then to stay the course.
I motion to begrudgingly maintain the current agreement while maintaining our argument against it as well.
All right. Can I get a second?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Mr. Krieg. All right, we are going to stay the course, and all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you very much, everyone. Well, moving on to 8C, which is the 100% renewable residential options. Mr. Drent.
Madam President, Commissioners, this was discussed at a previous meeting a while ago, that we may be bringing back some options for renewable energy to our customers. We've looked at broad scale for the whole organization, and we also looked at residential customers. And currently, our power supplier does have a program that customers can purchase renewable energy credits. For $1 extra on your bill, you get 50% renewable above the 20% that's mandated. For $2, you get 75%, and $3, you get 100% renewable. Some of the discussions that we had internally is and us as an organization, we've had other communities, we've seen other communities have these type of programs and purchase wholesale power and have more renewable energy on their docket. And we wanted to bring this option back, and as we're going through a rate study, is this something we wanted to look at? We got a couple different options here. We can leave the program as is. We can try to promote it better to see if we can get more people. We currently have a little over 470 people on this. We can automatically go to 50% renewable for all our residential customers, which would be $1 an increase on the customer's bill. Move to 75% in 2023 and 100% in 2024 as more of a step program. Or we could, start with 75% and then move up to 100%. Or if the commission decided to do 100% renewable in 2022, it would be a $3 adder to the customer charge. Understanding that this would affect the residential ratepayers by $3 per month. But then we would be able to, also push lots of material out about us and what we're doing as an organization to make sure that we're supporting the new renewable energy and some of the things that are coming down the pipeline. So just wanted to, a couple different options there for the commission. I will stand for any questions on what it may look like and what is the direction that this body would like to have on renewable energy in the future.
I think to recap, we're looking for $3, and it's just how that's going to be distributed if we decide to move to this program.
Yep.
Comments, questions from commissioners?
I've already talked a lot, but I'll talk more.
All right, Mr. Fox, go right.
I signed up for it when it first became available and never really thought about it again. My last electric bill was $285 without running the AC, so it's really a drop in the bucket compared to everything that does happen. And no, granted, that's not going to be the same for everyone, but still at the scale and the direction everything's going, and like, we have to have some kind of program that phases it in regardless, whether that's $1 this year, $2 next year, and $3 the third, whatever. But I noticed you did kind of say residential. Do we have a separate standard for commercial? Do we not give that? Do we demand that option?
I think for this next year, we're looking at, taking care of our residential, and then we will definitely be following up what commercial and industrial looks like. Again, we are looking, our wholesale power supplier is looking at some of these things as well and getting more renewable energy credit on the wholesale side. So some of these things would get phased away as the mandates get more and more. No, we're definitely looking at it. They can currently purchase it. It's just significantly more when you do put all the kilowatt hours that we purchase under it. So we just thought this would be a good step. And then definitely look at that in the following year. And Sharon will be looking at that with, on the marketing side of things, what's the best way, what's the best angle to do that.
What percentage of our, so 471 is what percentage of customers?
Well, we have 17,000 residential customers. Not very many.
Okay, so it's not, yeah. So my point would be, I think it still deserves some promotion instead of putting a charge on someone. Oh, I understand $1 is not significant. It may be to others, and also the idea of just putting it on someone is not always taken in the greatest sense. So I think I didn't even know. I didn't know it was available. We haven't been here for that long, but I think promotion might be a good way to keep going about it.
It wasn't really a great result for the water quality survey, though. I mean, people are always going to complain, yes, but the rates also do have to be reassessed, and we do have a future that will be green and renewable, and that bridge is going to have to be crossed at some point, and we've already got a couple of feet on there. So it's one of those things where people will begrudgingly have to be brought along, yeah, but if we say, well, hey, everyone can pay $1 more, we got $500 more, but we have to control the rates, and if part of that rate is an extra $1 to pay for the renewables, then that's part of why we're here too.
Ms. Brennan.
When we had this discussion previously, were the customers asked about their interest in doing this? And
Yeah, I can say that we've done brief stints on this. I don't think that we've really hit it hard. Again, just from our current structure and what our new structure will look like next year, I think we'll have more time to focus on some of these things. I think that was the plan, and that's why the organizational structure that you guys have approved, and as we make that shift, we can make these programs more accessible for people. I think that we've done what we could so far, and we hope to do things better next year. So yes, we've talked about it and done some brochures, but I wouldn't say we've really hit it home hard.
What about an opt-out? We just inform everyone, we will opt you in automatically to 1, 2, or 3, and if you want to change it, remove it, lower it, you can. And then we're giving them choice, we're informing them, but if they want to ignore it, don't care. I mean, the path of least resistance is do nothing.
Yeah, there's definitely been utilities that have done that, and it's been successful. So if somebody really doesn't want it, they can opt out of it. I do like that concept, and we could definitely implement that.
I see with to your point of the new structure, it's a great way to gauge how that new structure is helping engagement. I think that's been something that we've talked about, that we don't have the resources for it, we don't have the people for it. That's I think 99% of the reason why these things don't get signed up for, why people don't take advantage of certain X, Y, and Z things. I think the promotional side of this business isn't there yet. And I think that this is a great way to maybe get one thing we can do to gauge how well that stuff is going to be working in the future.
I agree. I think that I would like to see in 2022, maybe advertise it for 2022 and see where we're at the end of next year to determine if we should increase it or decrease it.
Yeah, we can definitely do that. We can have see what kind of, and then we'll also, our power agency will have different methods of doing things as well. Maybe maybe they'll be at a higher percentage and this 50% goes away. I'm not sure on that, but I think we'll see how that happens. But
Semi-related, do we approach property owners, like big warehouses that are our customers, with lots of roof space, about putting solar up there and like working together to them generate power discounts, whatever?
We do give some rebates for solar. If they're over a certain size, it has to go to MMPA to have a wholesale power contract. We have businesses that come to us from time to time, and, we give us a small rebate on that stuff. But, the challenges, and I think you'll see it, is we absolutely support those things. I think we've had over 100 applications for residential solar this year. Obviously, the challenge is then that also reduces how many kilowatt hours we sell as an organization and what we're trying to do and to keep rates competitive for everyone. So there's a balancing act there, but we definitely support it, and we have had lots of people that connect to our system every year, and this year alone, we had over 100 residential and a couple businesses that have explored that. So the businesses also have an option. They can buy credits here under this program, and we've had a couple businesses that do. 2 businesses, I think Sharon says, that have, and I think as we promote it going forward, and as Sharon gets out, meets some of our customers and have a face of the utility, we'll be able to promote these offerings even more.
So there's kind of a question about what the dollar goes to. So it goes to credits that go to what, I guess, is what I'm trying to figure out. Like, what is the money actually going to?
Yeah, so that it is a pass-through expense that goes to our power supplier, and our power supplier has to purchase renewable energy credits or use renewable energy credits that they have in their portfolios, and they report that to the state, and they write those credits off. So it's a reporting requirement that it is a renewable product, and our power agency actually reports that to the state. And that's where it gets, the end result is that the state sees, okay, you got this many dollars collected, and you had this many renewable energy credits that you wrote off. So they have renewable energy credits in their portfolio with their wind projects and their solar projects that they have.
So if we were at 100%, then we essentially would have enough money to purchase credits enough to cover the energy our residential customers would use.
Correct.
Right.
Absolutely.
Whether or not the electricity actually comes from a renewable source, it's about the purchasing of the credit. No, the stuff that actually turns on their light, right? 'Cause
Correct.
once it all goes in.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a mix, but we have to have those credits in our portfolio. Otherwise, we would get in trouble on the other side.
Right,
So,
right.
but I would agree that the switch they turn on doesn't get that
Right.
watt
just not how
that
it
get
works.
produced somewhere else. Correct.
The other question I had was just about the dollar charge instead of maybe adding it to the rate that they actually pay. Right, so I was just wondering why we decided to put it on as a fixed charge, if the goal is to is it so that we hit a specific dollar amount, or?
Well, I was just trying to mimic our wholesale power suppliers program that they have. If we were doing something company-wide, we could do it on a megawatt hour and have a fixed charge. But I ran the numbers with our power supplier. I had some meetings with the finance, Kelly and myself had a meeting there, what that would look like, and they weren't making any more money than what renewable energy credits cost. I mean, on the 600, it was within $30,000. So I mean, it was pretty close. That's what renewable energy credits cost right now. We took an average bill that we have on our system and then multiplied it out by 17,000 customers and how many credits we would need. But that's pretty much what it costs right now.
Yeah, I was just thinking, like, again, for me, like adding $3 to my bill's similar to Caden's, right? Like I probably don't even notice it, right? But for someone else, that $3 might matter. But if we were to put it on the rate itself, me and Caden end up paying a little bit more than the person who's using less.
I
Right,
follow
so
what you're saying.
it comes down to, the people who are using more end up paying a little bit more for getting that renewable energy. People who are using less, aren't paying as much.
So why don't we do this? Why don't we, just a consensus that we leave the program alone for 2022? Sharon's got big shoulders and she can take this on and see what we can do. And then if it comes back in at the end of 2022 for 2023, we should look at more of a rate base than strictly a dollar figure. All right, thank you very much.
All right. Glad we had that consensus. So thank you, everyone, for 8C. Moving on, number 9 is human resources. We have nothing there. Number 10, general. 10A is our marketing and customer service report. Ms. Walsh.
President Mokel, Commissioners, hello. I have a very short list tonight. It's been pretty much status quo since we met on the 4th. I'm happy to report, though, I did have another meeting with one of our large key accounts. They're interested in their conservation and sustainability efforts. So we had an initial meeting, and we'll be having a walk through their facility sometime in early December. From an operations side, I'm currently working with the finance team to look at our collection processes in terms of what we send to the collection agency. So you guys are all very, very familiar with the delinquencies and the disconnects. This would be, what do we do after someone has moved out and we have these delinquent balances? And then lastly, just this past week, we did have a counterfeit $100 bill that was passed to us. And when we went to the bank the following morning to make the deposit, the bank identified it for us. So between the attentive actions of Denise Behrens at the front desk and also the security cameras that we were able to pull footage from, we've been able to identify with great confidence the individual and the actual bill that was passed. The police department is aware of it. We didn't get into details with the customer, but we notified them that we were unable to deposit their payment, and they have since made a payment to us via credit card online. So everything is really status quo or whole from that perspective. But what we have decided is that as of this morning, our staff will be marking bills $20 and larger. Those pens are very inexpensive. I purchased them and distributed them this morning. So that concludes my update.
All right, any questions for Ms. Walsh? Seeing none, thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
All right. Moving on to 10B is our update on the MVEC territory acquisition. Commissioner Brennan has the
Yeah.
wording.
I make a motion that the commission go into closed session under the Minnesota statutes, section 13D.05 subdivision 3C, to develop or consider offers for the purchase of electric service territory rights and facilities of the Minnesota Valley Electric Cooperative.
All right, I have a motion, and can I get a second? Seconded by Mr. Fox. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion passes. We are in closed session.